Hi everybody, I am Follygon, and welcome to another digital sculpting video. In this one, I'm going to be sculpting a very flowy betta fish, but before we get in and talk about the sculpting process, click that subscribe button if you are new around here. And if you'd like to learn more about digital sculpting, maybe even grab my custom brushes, you can do that at gumroad.com/Follygon. There is a link down below in the description. So before I started tackling this quick sculpt, I was a little wary because fish are unfortunately not the most attractive things in the world, so I wanted to sculpt this in such a way that the focus wouldn't be on the not so appealing face of said fish. I do give it a face, and you'll see that come to life here very soon, but I wanted the focus of this sculpt to be on the flow of the fins. And I take a lot of liberties with that idea and design, as this is supposed to be a betta fish, but anatomically, I stray from that pretty far. So I take a lot of creative liberties with the design of the fish, trying to bring a lot more focus to that area, while also maintaining a little bit of truth to some of the form. Here is that beautiful face of our betta fish. I don't have some grudge against fish or betta fish specifically. I used to have a pet betta fish myself, and I babysit my sisters every time she goes on vacation or goes somewhere to travel. So I can both love betta fish and also be aware that they are maybe not the most attractive thing in the world. I keep everything here very simple for the face. You can see me very quickly sculpting on the form for some quick eyes, a little bit of form for the mouth, and that's pretty much where I leave the face. I come back later and add some very subtle scales, but because the focus, as I mentioned, is going to be on all the fins and the flowing form back there, that is where I spend a majority of my time. Now, if I was spending more than an hour working on this, then sure, I would probably go back through and really refine everything for the fish's body, the gills, the eyes, the mouth, etc., you know? But when you are working on something where you have a time constraint, like I am doing with these daily sculpts, I don't necessarily always have enough time to throw at every little part. So I have to choose where I want to, have my attention, have my focus, and that is typically where I want the audience's attention and focus as well. I also want to point out how kind of free-flowing, excuse the pun, here I am with the design. But if you take a look at the fins that I'm working on for the front area of the fish, I start off with a basic kind of flat shape, and then begin adding these tubes of geometry on top of that. Then I play around with inflating some different areas there to create some ballooning effects to go from a thinner kind of strand there to something a bit more thick. And all of a sudden I started to like that idea quite a lot more, and I completely nixed the fin that I had there previously. But I didn't remove it completely. I wanted to reuse something that I had sculpted, so I just slid those lower on the body and kind of combined that form with the rest of the tail. One of the most common things that I get asked to make tutorials on or videos on is hair. Hair is something that is just really complex, and the fins here for this fish are actually very similar to working on hair. There are a lot of interactive elements working together to create a larger whole. And that is pretty much what hair is. And I tackle the fins here in a very similar strategy to how I might tackle a larger free-flowing hairstyle. So in one area there in the middle, I have this larger shape. I start with that, get it into position, rough proportion, and then I chop that up into many more segments. That is just one technique though. If you look at the other pieces that I already had in place, those were created individually. I just pulled out tubes at the beginning of the video and started to kind of figure those out one by one. Now both of those are really great techniques, and I don't think that necessarily one is better than the other, which is why I just so happen to use both of them here. So with that larger whole piece, a lot of that form kind of works together a little bit better, and the more red pieces that I created initially start to break up that silhouette even more, creating a lot more asymmetry. And I could take these yellow pieces further and continue to push on that idea. Because I was creating something a little bit more complex here, I was fine with using both techniques. And if you're a sculptor yourself, I think you should experiment with multiple techniques, figure out what works best for you, or maybe even be like me and just go with the flow, do what you can with what you have. That's more a mentality moving forward when you are sketching though, as I'm under a little bit more of a deadline. I spent an hour and a half on this fish. I would say that pretty much all that time was spent working on the fins, but you can see that I've done a lot more stuff like adding some textures, adding some secondary forms to a couple areas, completely neglecting the underside of the fins and fish, because I'm pretty much only going to do a quick render, creating the silhouette for that single view. And if I had a little bit more time, I would have revised that bottom area a little bit more, made that more presentable. So I really liked the kind of thin tubular forms that I was getting for the upper part of the fins that I created earlier, and I wanted to integrate that into the lower section of the fish as well. So I start by following the contour of those larger fin shapes that I have, and then I duplicate a lot of these long tubes and start giving them a little bit more non-uniformity, breaking up the silhouette even more, and playing with that shape. Now I thought I could maybe just play with presenting those completely by themselves, and if I ever return to something like this, I think that that would be a cool strategy. But for what I had there, I wasn't really liking the kind of airy nature, all the gaps that it had in between the areas. So instead, I went back through and integrated those kind of stringy parts with the larger sections of the fins that I created earlier. Now, like I mentioned, this is anatomically not accurate, but in terms of creating something that is beautiful, I really liked the idea of this design. And then here at the end of the sculpt, pretty much everything that's left is working on integrating these pieces to work a little bit better together. When you're working on things that are complex, it's good to break them down into smaller sections, but after you do that with all the different areas, you need to work on the cohesive whole as well. And then a quick turntable here at the end because it is a digital sculpt, a 3D model, so I want you guys to see the whole thing. And like I said, the bottom is very unrefined, but hopefully you can forgive me. As I said, I only had an hour and a half on this. But that's gonna be it for this quick video. Hope you guys enjoyed the sculpt. If you did, click that thumbs up and click that subscribe button if you're new around here. Check out gumroad.com/Follygon for my online courses, brushes, materials, etc. And if you have an idea for a future sculpt, throw it down in the comment section below. I would love to hear from you. Have a great rest of your day, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.